Hello and welcome to another video. On the bench today we have a 1968 Harmony Stella let's see, what is this one? This was an H942 according to the numbers up there, if we can see those. There we go, H942. Those first four numbers, I don't think anybody in the world knows what those are all about, but they have something to do with like a batch number or something, I think, from the factory. The number 5, I'm not sure what it is either. Right down there, very, very vaguely, you can see the Made in USA stamp. You may not be able to see it on this video; it may not come out, but it's there. It has the 68 there. Kind of have to do some contrast adjustments and things to really make it out, but it's there. At any rate, this is a ladder brace guitar. These can sound really good. This is bigger than your typical Stella that you see. Most Stellas are parlor size. This one's more of a concert size, or classical size. This one suffers from what most of these Harmonies sort of suffer from, and that's somewhat high action at the 12th fret. The action isn't terrible. You can play it, but it can be improved. Most luthiers will tell you, the quote-unquote right way to do this is to reset the neck, but that involves taking out this fret, drilling a couple holes, steaming the neck off, and actually reshaping the dovetail joint, reattaching everything. It's a very labor-intensive process, and for something like this, that's probably not worth more than a couple $100 anyway at maximum, right? At least in today's market, that's kind of a lot of work for no return. So what we're going to do here instead, what we could do, actually, there's a little bit of meat on this, on the saddle here that we could shave down. There is quite a good amount of break over this saddle as it stands. So what I'm going to do, instead of shaving this saddle down, and what I mean by break over the saddle, if you're not familiar with the term, is the angle at which the string goes over the saddle and then dives down into the hole here. If there's not a good enough angle there, it actually won't make real good connection, and you don't get the best tone out of an acoustic. So that's why you really don't want to shave the saddle down too much, otherwise you won't get enough break over the saddle to apply good pressure to the bridge as a whole, which in turn transfers those vibrations to the rest of the top. This being, again, a ladder brace top, it's going to have a really nice, tight, focused, sort of, ladder braced sound. But what we need to do is really get this action down a little bit. So what we're going to do instead, notice here a couple of screws that hold the bridge on. We're going to take these screws out. We're going to pop the strings off. We'll get a knife under here and pop this bridge off, and take the bridge itself, because it's fairly tall. You'll notice there's a lot of meat on this bridge. So we're gonna take a different approach here, rather than the hugely labor-intensive process of taking the neck off and resetting it. We're actually going to just shave this bridge down. And on a guitar like this, again, that's not worth any more than a couple $100 anyway. I mean, originality of this guitar is not paramount. Therefore, we can make this a really nice playing guitar, I believe, by taking this approach instead. So let's get into that. A quick tip on bridge pins. When you're removing bridge pins, sometimes they can get pretty stuck, especially on a guitar that's been sitting around for a while. If you have a string winder, you may or may not know this already. There is a little dimple right here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's there. There you go. See this little space right here? Actually, that's what that's for. That's for pulling bridge pins. You can put them in there like so, and then pull them out. Just like that. But if you don't have one of these string winders, the next best thing, if you have some stuck bridge pins, if you have some pliers like this, or some wire cutters rather, you can insert them back here. No, you don't want to cut the bridge pin off, obviously, but if you place your hand underneath the back part, you can get some leverage. You get a little bit of a fulcrum going, and don't, obviously, again, don't squeeze this way too hard, otherwise you'll just cut you'll kind of booger these up, and you don't want to do that. But this is a pretty easy thing. I've found this is a real easy way, and most of the time if I have my pliers out, this is the way I do it. Just create a fulcrum with your hand back here, and they'll pop right out. So that's a quick tip of the day. Before we go any further, actually, I've already taken a couple strings off, but before we go any further, I've still got the D string on here, and it will give us an idea. But I'm going to measure the height at the 12th fret here with some feeler gauges and just get an idea of what kind of improvement we made at the end of this process. Okay, so 0.26, 0.0, excuse me, 0.026, 0.028, 0.030, and 0.032. Add those together, and that is the height at the 12th fret at the moment. So, you know, whatever that is. I'm not going to sit here and do the math, but that's what we have going there. So that's where we started from, and that'll give us sort of a gauge of where we're going. All right, in my experience, these bridges do have some glue on them. We're going to reach under here, take the screws out, make sure we don't lose the nuts that are inside. Sorry you can't see that. It's kind of a stupid angle for that camera. You'll get to see a good shot of my arm there as I take the stuff out. But basically that's all there is. There's some hardware, washer, bolt, and a little nut. We want to make sure we don't lose those. Let's set those aside. A lot of times these bridges will just pop right off because the glue that they used will crystallize over time. Especially Harmony guitars, they seem to, the glue didn't always hold up the best on Harmonies from this sort of era. I mean, they did well for what they are, but the glue is sometimes can kind of crystallize. And but what we're going to do now is get a knife for this. Okay, this is a bridge and neck removal tool, knives. And if I was removing the neck, you know, I could stick it under here as well and work my way up. But since I'm doing the bridge, I'll start here at the corner. A lot of times, again, these bridges will sort of just pop off. I am not going to heat this knife or anything. A lot of times you will want to heat them if you have a bridge, you know, on something like a Martin or something with a little better glue. But this one, you know, obviously on Harmonies, they weren't counting on the glue holding this thing on anyway. They just put a minimal amount on there. And supplemented with the bolts. The bolts are doing the bulk of the work. This glue is just kind of complementary glue, I guess. It's not doing very much. And actually, when I put this bridge back on, I may or may not even apply any glue at all. But you see how fast this is going. On most bridges from you know, higher end guitars companies like, you know, Guild or Martin or Gibson, this process takes a lot longer. And any of you guys who've done this before, you know, you can fast forward through all this crap, but this might be interesting to some of you. But I want to make sure we don't get that. And you kind of have to be, yeah, that came off pretty cleanly actually. Sometimes it can startle you when it pops off like that. You think you've broken something, but no, it's just the last bit of glue coming loose. But there's the bridge off. And what I'm going to do now is lay down some sandpaper and proceed to sand this thing. Okay, I'm going to take a bit of this sandpaper. You can get this stuff on, it rolls. This is 3M sandpaper, and this is, what is this? This is 80 grit. 216U, I guess, is the part number. But you can get this from Stuart McDonald and other places online as well. I think probably if you get it from StewMac, it's going to be a little more expensive. But I actually like to keep some of this on a surface in my work area anyway. You know, something like this. Because I use it so often, it's good just to leave it on a pull-out drawer like this. That way I can just pull it out when I need it. Usually you have to be mindful when you're doing bridges like this, like if you're restoring something old, and you have to do some work on the bridge, and you have to get it back on. The bridge will have some bit of belly in it. So what you have to do is you have to get some of this sandpaper actually and stick it to a piece of paper or something like that, so that you don't have the issue of the sticky stuff. And you can lay it down on the guitar, directly on the guitar top, and you kind of have to secure it on the guitar top with your fingers while you actually do the sanding on the top. It takes a hell of a lot longer because you have to be more careful, but that allows you to get the bridge exactly to the contour of the top. Now in the case of this top, and most harmonies like this, they don't have really any belly or bulge on the top. Most of these are pretty flat, so I'm just going to do it over here on this surface, and that'll take a lot less time.
My hands and knees.
Check out this little guy outside my window. I don't know what he's eating. He was right up against the glass. Where you going, little dude? Okay, later on. Okay, I've sanded a lot of the bulk off of this thing. It's a lot thinner than it was. I've also gone ahead and sanded a little bit on the saddle. I haven't taken a whole lot off the saddle, but I did take some because we could stand to. This is also a good time, if you'll notice right here, the way it's angled right now, it's all angled forward, but this is a good time to adjust some intonation on the saddle. And what I'm going to do that is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to angle the bass portion backwards from about the E string up to the D string, and then into the G. We'll start to fade it so that it's angled more forwards. So if you angle it backwards on the E, you kind of compensating with your saddle a little bit. So what I'm going to do is get a couple of files, and this saddle is glued into this bridge pretty well, so I'm not going to try to take it out and risk breaking it, so I'm just going to file it a little bit as it sits. But the goal here is basically just to get the intonation adjusted backwards on these bottom strings by filing the front edge of the saddle a little bit, so that the knife edge is all the way at the back of the saddle for those three strings, the first three at least. And when we do that, we're actually removing some of the bulk also from the saddle, so we'll have to compensate somewhat on the high strings for that, so that it's even across. This is kind of unconventional. I'm just doing it in midair here, but it's all about speed. To get something like this done a little more quickly, it's a little more justifiable to work on it. If you start taking a ton of time with something like this, you know, you kind of start to get underwater on your time. At that point, it becomes more of a labor of love, and there's nothing left in it for somebody like me if you want to make a buck or two on it, or try. On something like this, it's more of a labor of love anyway, to be honest, because these guitars, I just happen to love them because they sound really good. They're American made. They're all solid wood. You don't find harmonies that aren't all solid wood unless they are arch tops. And even some of those, I think, probably all solid wood. But they're definitely guitars that are worth playing, worth saving. And I like to see them in good nick. Alright, we're ready to glue this thing back on here. I usually just use regular Tite Bond wood glue. You can get this stuff on Amazon and stuff too. I'll put a link in the description if you want if you want this stuff. And also this 3M stuff. Look in the description for a link there if you want to track that stuff down. But I usually put just a little bit of this. I like this glue. It's pretty good all-purpose stuff. But I'm just going to stick a little bit on here. Again, the glue isn't doing very much on this guitar, to be honest. But I'm going to put a little bit on here anyway. I'm just going around these holes. I don't want it to kind of fill up the peg holes on us. But I do at least want to get it out here on the edges. And we're going to need a wet rag as well. I always forget to do that part. There's always something I forget to do. But in this case, we're going to need a wet rag. But I'm going to get this, let's just set it down on there. Good thing about, that's another good thing about this stuff is it cleans up really easily. You can just get a damp cloth, even if it's been sitting on for a while. You can just get a damp cloth and it'll come right off. And let's find my bolts. Get those back in. Let's see. Here's the part that can be a bit of a pain in the ass. But this is kind of the cool thing about this. I mean, these screws will basically act as our clamps. I'm not even going to bother clamping this because these bolts will basically clamp it down. I don't know, I might get a clamp here in the middle just to be on the safe side. Let's see. I don't think I'll need it, and I don't think I've ever used one in the past when I've done the same thing. But this is always kind of a fiddly part to try to get your hand in here and put this nut on there. If you have big hands or big arms, mine are kind of medium size, I guess, but if you have real big arms or hands, it might be a problem. Especially on some of the little parlor guitars. Oh, come on, hell. Yeah, this must be riveting to watch. I'm sure you guys are chomping at the bit. Biting your fingernails. Yeah, again, you can't even see anything, can you? In the way. Okay, I'll just kind of get that more or less finger tight at the moment. Come over here and get our other one. To cinch all the way down on one side. We don't want to cinch down on this one all the way and then come over here and cinch down this one all the way because we might end up cracking the bridge. We want to evenly sort of tighten these down a little bit at a time here. Okay, that's pretty much it. We're going to get a damp cloth and clean up our excess glue, and we'll be ready to put some strings back on this. All right. There's our excess glue cleaned up. Okay, here's our bridge reattached. The strings are on. They're not fully tightened up yet. I actually don't have the glue's not completely dry yet, so I'm not going to tighten them all the way up. But I've got enough slack out so that we can actually measure again at the 12th fret on this D string and see how much we knocked off. Now, if we'll recall, we had these four that slipped under there before, so we're at 2, 4, And there's 6 there, so that's 1. That's 0.1. The 8 and the 2 is 0.116. So we had 0.116 inches before. Let's see how much we knocked off. All right. Here's our feeler gauge underneath here now. And I think that's about right. And actually, you know, come to think of it, the first time I did the measurement, my feeler gauges didn't quite touch the string. Right here they are touching the string, so we actually took off a little bit more than this reading is going to tell us. But let's look at it here again. All right, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, and then 8. There's another 1, so there's 0.1, or no, excuse me, 0.081, 0.0, something like that. So took off quite a bit actually. Yeah, I think my math is more or less right there. Yep, 0.09. Let's see, 10. So we're at about 0.1. So we took off 0.016 of an inch, more or less, off of the height of the strings at this point, which that doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is a lot. That is an entire feeler gauge. I'll show you here. This whole feeler gauge right here. I've got actually one that's exactly that measurement. There's a 0.016. So we took off about that much at the 12th fret. Again, doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot in terms of playability. Your fingers can definitely feel it. So once we get this, the strings back on this thing completely, we'll give it, and the glue is completely dried under here. We'll give this thing a quick sound test. And while we're waiting for the glue to dry on that guitar, I thought I'd show off my my latest Craigslist find from the free section of Craigslist. Yeah, you heard that right, free section. This thing actually didn't work right when I got it. It did spin, but it didn't spin at the right rate. But there's some adjustments inside, so I went inside and adjusted it. And this is a Sanyo. It's a 1979 Sanyo TP 1005A. The belt was good on it. Like I said, all I had to do really was adjust the speed. But yeah, pretty cool for a free Craigslist find. I can't imagine. I mean, they were cleaning out the house. I actually got a couple other things they were cleaning out. I just happened to be the first guy there, I guess. You got to be on the ball and that kind of stuff. But yeah, well, I thought we'd spin some music here while we're waiting on that to dry. Let's go for some Jethro Tull. Any Tull fans out there? I've got a lot of their albums, man. Okay, the glue's all dry on this thing, and I think we've improved it by several orders of measure. And let's give it a listen.
Okay, so that's the 1968 Harmony Stella H942. If you get a chance to pick up one of these for a decent price, you should do so, because they're all solid wood, good guitars, and with a little work, they can usually be great guitars. So thanks for watching. If y'all haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so down here and keep up with more videos like this in the future. And y'all take care.